Arendor had always imagined that representing Earth in interstellar diplomacy would involve calm discussions, dignified robes, and perhaps a tasteful hologram slideshow. Instead, he found himself walking through the obsidian corridors of Ethereum's floating palace, trying desperately not to look like a man who had spent the entire shuttle ride practicing how not to faint. The air shimmered faintly with static energy, the palace suspended above a roiling nebula sea that glowed like molten clouds. He told himself that this was an honor. He also told himself that hyperventilating would be undignified, which was the only reason he hadn't already done it. His escort, 12-foot-tall palace guards clad in armor that hummed with arc currents, marched in perfect synchronization beside him. They did not look down at him, mostly because doing so would probably cause neck strain, but their silent presence was somehow more unnerving than if they had been glaring. Arendor cleared his throat and attempted conversation. "So, nice weather outside," he said. One guard blinked. The other made a sound that might have been a grunt or the palace heating system adjusting. Hard to tell. The necklace resting beneath his collar thumped softly against his chest as he walked. The familiar weight was comforting, even here in this intimidating place. He had worn it every day since childhood, a crystalline pendant on a cord that had seen better centuries. It glowed faintly now, though he told himself it was simply reacting to the palace's lighting, not ominously sensing ancient alien destiny or anything dramatic like that. If it started vibrating, he promised himself he would turn around and run. At last, the towering doors of the throne chamber opened, each slab of obsidian sliding aside with the soft hiss of shifting planets. The guards stepped aside and Arendor forced his legs to move forward, trying not to imagine the entire court watching him with the expectation that he might do something spectacularly foolish, which, given his track record, was statistically likely. The throne room was vast, stretching out like a cathedral built by a civilization with a flair for intimidation. High above, crystalline structures floated weightlessly, orbiting one another in elegant slow motion. The air hummed with energy, the walls rippling with faint star maps that shifted as though alive. And at the far end, radiant, composed, impossibly regal, sat Queen Selivara of Etherion. She was unmistakable. Blue-skinned, golden-haired, long ears rising like slender crescent wings, she looked carved from starlight and command. Her gaze was cool and steady, the kind that made galaxies reconsider their diplomatic stance. Arendor swallowed hard, bowed, and told himself not to trip. He managed 2 steps before his boot caught on the hem of his cloak, and he corrected himself so abruptly that one guard snorted. Definitely a snort. He approached the throne with what he hoped was dignity. The pendant slipped from beneath his collar, catching a beam of light as it swung forward. He reached to tuck it back into place, and then froze. Because Selivara had frozen. Her golden eyes sharpened, widened, then softened into something unguarded, almost fragile. For a heartbeat, the throne room fell completely silent, as though the palace itself held its breath. Selivara rose slowly from her seat. The court gasped. Arendor wondered whether this meant he was already failing the peace mission or if this was a normal royal reaction to seeing an ambassador's jewelry. But her expression was not anger. It was something far more unsettling. Recognition. She stepped down the throne's crystalline steps, every movement controlled yet trembling. Arendor tried to offer a diplomatic smile, which likely came out as a pained grimace. "Your Majesty, I assure you this necklace isn't a forbidden artifact. At least I'm 70% sure. Maybe 65. She didn't laugh. She didn't speak. Instead, she lifted one hand, stopping just short of touching the pendant. Her fingers shook. Her gaze shimmered, and Arendor realized with dawning shock that she was crying. Actual silent tears tracking down cheeks that had likely not known such vulnerability in decades. The court erupted into panicked whispers. Guards stiffened, confused and alarmed. Several nobles fainted dramatically, which Arendor suspected was a cultural hobby. Selivara whispered something barely audible. A name, not his title, not ambassador, but the small, clumsy nickname only one person had ever used for him. 23 years ago, in a dusty border colony where a frightened refugee girl with long ears had shared a piece of her broken world with a boy who thought her strange appearance was simply cool. The realization struck him like a pulse wave. The queen, this powerful, revered sovereign, was the girl he had once helped hide behind scrap metal and feed with stolen biscuits. The girl who had given him the pendant in gratitude on the day she was taken away by her people. The girl he had never forgotten. He opened his mouth to speak, then shut it again because his brain had chosen that moment to stop functioning. Celavera's voice cracked softly. "You kept it." Arendor, scrambling for sanity, nodded. "Well, yes. I mean, you can't just throw out a gift from someone who saved you from being chased by an angry desert lizard. Twice." A strangled sound came from one of the guards. Arendor suspected it was laughter. Celavara covered her mouth, shoulders shaking, not entirely from sorrow. And as the court watched their queen break protocol, tradition, and the sound barrier of emotional restraint, Arendor understood that the moment he stepped into this palace, nothing about his mission or his life would ever be simple again. The throne room doors sealed behind them with a deep resonant hum, the kind that suggested several tons of alien metal had just decided to remove itself from the conversation. Arendor tried not to flinch. Queen Celavara tried not to look like she was falling apart. Both failed in spectacular synchronization. The air shimmered faintly, an automatic privacy field, no doubt, and he suddenly felt as if he stood inside a warm, glowing bubble that politely discouraged eavesdropping by vaporizing any sound waves that wandered too far. Celavera wiped at her cheeks, then immediately pretended she had not done so. Her regal composure attempted a comeback, stumbled, and face-planted. "I apologize," she whispered, voice thin, but steadying. "This is unexpected." Arendor forced a smile, doing his best to suppress the rising panic that he was now personally responsible for destabilizing an empire. "Unexpected good or unexpected? Prepare the escape pods." Her long ears twitched, an unmistakable sign of emotional turmoil, though he remembered from childhood that twitching could also mean she was trying not to laugh. "Unexpected," she repeated, then gestured toward a side chamber glowing softly with shifting blue light. "Come with me. Please." He followed her into a smaller room designed for private council, though it looked more like a cross between a star observatory and a luxury meditation pod. Holographic constellations drifted lazily across the high ceiling, and a floating tea table glided toward them with impeccable timing, as if trained to detect emotional crises. Celavera sank into a hovering seat. Arendor sat opposite, and immediately sank several inches too far, nearly disappearing into the cushion before he clawed his way upright. He pretended this was intentional. She pretended not to notice, though her eyes sparkled suspiciously. "You remember," she said softly, her fingers clasping and unclasping, as if unsure what to hold on to. "You remember the colony, the sandstorms, the hideouts." A pause, fragile yet warm. "The stolen biscuits." Arendor coughed. "In my defense, the store owner said they were unchild-proofable." It sounded like encouragement. A breathy laugh escaped her, so quiet he might have imagined it. The holographic stars flickered, as though adjusting to a rare atmospheric condition, the Queen of Etherian displaying actual emotion. For a long moment, they simply looked at one another, memories weaving silently between them. The scared alien girl with long ears, hiding in the ruins. The boy who thought she looked like a storybook elf and told her so with absolute sincerity. The shared meals, the whispered fears, the day she was taken away by a rescue patrol in shimmering armor. "I thought I'd never see you again," she whispered. "My life changed so fast after that. Duty, expectations, politics." She exhaled. "And all the while I kept wondering whether the boy with the two big boots ever grew into them." "Barely," he admitted. "I still trip over nothing. It's my signature move." Her lips curved. "I noticed." The pendant pulsed faintly between them, a soft glow responding to her presence. Celavara's gaze slipped to it, then away. Suddenly she looked more hesitant, as if approaching a subject she wasn't sure she had the right to touch. "The necklace," she began. "You must know there is more to it than sentiment." Arendor blinked. "Yes, well, I guessed when your guards scanned me 17 times. It is an ancient relic," she said, "a symbol once used by my people to recognize potential bond partners." She quickly lifted a hand. "Not Romantic bond partners. Not necessarily. It once represented unity between clans, harmony, shared destiny. She paused, then added, though the romantic interpretation became popular among poets, which was not helpful for diplomacy. He mulled this over. So just to clarify, I'm wearing something that suggests we are cosmically compatible? Her ears twitched again. Yes. Oh, he said. Well, that explains why the guards looked like they were planning a wedding. Salavera groaned softly into her palms. They are already gossiping, I can feel it. She straightened. But none of that matters. What matters is that you kept it. All these years. He touched the pendant. I promised I would, and I always keep promises made to friends. He hesitated. We were friends, weren't we? Her eyes softened, luminous with old memories. You were my first friend. Silence stretched, warm and aching. Outside the sealed doors, the galaxy continued its relentless dance of politics and conflict. Inside, time slowed to the quiet heartbeat of two people rediscovering a connection they had never truly lost. But the palace alarm suddenly chimed, softly, politely, like an embarrassed messenger clearing its throat. Salavera frowned and activated a hovering console. A flood of glowing symbols appeared. It seems, she said with a sigh, the council is demanding to know why I sealed the throne room. They suspect emotional compromise. Should I wave at them to confirm? Arendor offered. She gave him a sharp look, then laughed despite herself. No, but we must address this. The court will twist our reunion into prophecy if we are not careful. Prophecy, he repeated. Please tell me that's a metaphor. It is decidedly not. He slumped. Wonderful. Salavera rose, regal once more, but now with softness beneath the steel. Whatever comes next, we face it together, just as we did as children. He smiled back at her. And hopefully with fewer sandstorms. She extended a hand. He took it, and the pendant glowed brighter. The council chamber doors parted with a soft, mechanical sigh, the kind that suggested the palace itself was politely bracing for chaos. Arendor stepped inside beside Salavara, doing his best to look like a respectable ambassador, and not a man who had spent the last hour learning that his childhood necklace was apparently a cosmic matchmaking device. Salavara carried herself with regal composure again, though every few steps her long ears twitched, betraying nerves she would never admit to having. The chamber was filled with nobles, advisors, and one elderly archivist who looked ready to faint at the slightest emotional disturbance. Truly a supportive environment. A dozen holographic panels shimmered above the round table, each displaying images of the pendant, rotating it dramatically as though auditioning for a jewelry commercial. The council's leading minister cleared his throat. Your Majesty, Ambassador Arendor, we have concerns. Yes, Arendor said before Salavara could respond, because he had decided that panicking proactively was better than waiting. I'm aware this looks bad, though to be fair, I'm involved in many things that look bad initially, but turn out only moderately disastrous. Several nobles exchanged wary glances. Salavara shot him a look that managed to combine affection, exasperation, and a silent plea not to derail galactic politics with his sense of humor. He straightened and tried again. What the Queen and I share is a childhood connection, he said, a memory of kindness in a place where neither of us had much of it. Yes, the pendant glows. Yes, that seems to worry everyone. But we are here to negotiate peace, not destiny. The minister tapped a floating tablet. The pendant identifies compatible souls, Ambassador. Historically, such bonds have shaped empires. Arendor leaned in. Has anyone considered that maybe the pendant is simply reacting to me being very stressed? Because I assure you, this is peak stress. The archivist gasped. The pendant glow pulsed brighter. Salavara covered her face briefly, whispering, Please stop making it glow. You're scaring them. He whispered back. It's glowing on its own. It has a personality. I think it likes drama. A ripple of laughter moved through the chamber. Soft, startled, almost relieved. The tension cracked just enough for Salavara to step forward, her voice steady and warm. My counsel, she said. I have spent years shaping Ethereum's future through duty alone, but fate has brought Arendor back into my life, not as prophecy, but as a reminder of who I once was. The girl I used to be, before the throne, before the expectations, believed in compassion. He taught her that. Arendor blinked. He had expected many things, most involving stern lectures or emergency evacuation pods. Not this. Selivara continued. Etherian must not fear a bond forged in childhood friendship, nor should we let fear dictate our diplomacy. What we build from this reunion will not be written by relics, legends, or superstition, but by choice. The council murmured among themselves. Some nodded. Others looked suspicious of all emotional displays, but at least no one fainted this time. Finally, the minister spoke. Then the question is simple, Your Majesty. What do you choose? Selivara turned toward Arendor. Her golden hair shimmered like strands of sunlight woven through crystal. Her long ears lifted slightly, hopeful, nervous, vulnerable. I choose peace, she said softly. And I choose to honor the bond between us without allowing it to dictate our futures. Let it be a symbol, not of destiny, but of unity between our peoples. Arendor felt something warm settle inside him, steady and certain. He stepped beside her. And I choose to stand with her, strictly in a diplomatic capacity, he added quickly, unless the council wants to declare me an honorary cosmic symbol, in which case I demand snacks. A few nobles actually smiled. The archivist fainted very quietly. With a formal vote, the council accepted the Queen's decision. Etherian and Earth would proceed with the peace treaty, strengthened rather than threatened by the rediscovered connection between their leaders. Later, as the council chamber emptied and palace lights dimmed to the soft glow of evening mode, Selivara and Arendor walked together through the star gardens. They paused beside a floating bridge where ribbons of plasma drifted like slow-moving auroras beneath them. You handled yourself well, she said gently. I tripped twice, he reminded her. Yes, she agreed with a small smile. But you did not fall. That is improvement. He laughed, then sobered. Selivara, today changed me. I came here terrified of ruining everything. But seeing you again, remembering who we were, it reminded me that diplomacy isn't just treaties and formalities. It's people, connections, promises. She touched the pendant lightly, her fingers warm against his chest. You kept yours. And I'll keep the new ones too. Silence settled between them, not heavy but full. The nebulous sea shimmered below, like endless fireflies beneath glass. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. Whatever path we choose next, we choose it together, not bound by relics, not by fate, but by who we've become. He nodded. Then let's build something better than prophecy. Side by side, they looked out across the glowing horizon. Two souls reunited not by destiny, but by a shared memory transformed into a future worth shaping. And for the first time in many years, the galaxy around them felt just a little bit brighter.